G'day gamers, Ranger Tony here with another Pathfinder Kingmaker video, and today I'm going to talk about animal companions. So unfortunately, I feel that animal companions is one part of the game that's a little bit poorly set up and just as poorly documented, which we're going to see as we go along. So there are 6 classes that can get animal companions. The Mad Dog Barbarian can take an animal companion. The cleric, any of the clerics, if you choose an animal domain, can get an animal companion. All of the druids except for the blight druid can get an animal companion. The sacred hunt master inquisitor can get an animal companion. Rangers, of course, the default ranger can get an animal companion as part of its hunter's bond at level 4. And then the sylvan sorcerer can get an animal companion as well. So there are 9 different animal companions available in the game. So if we just pick the Mad Dog Barbarian, for example, we can see here are the animal companions. So I'll just briefly look at each one of these. There's a lot of information provided here. Well, there's some information provided here. Some of it is incorrect. There's a lot of information that's missing. For example, there is no information on hit points for your animal companion. All of the animal companions seem to start at level 2. At least that's what the game tells you. They're at level 2. And they have either 11 or 13 hit points depending on their constitution. However, if you try and calculate what their hit points per level should be, based on that, it works out as 4 hit points per level. But that's not what it ends up being, because when you level up, you get generally 8 hit points per level. And we'll see in a minute, I have a chart which shows the progression of the animal companions throughout the game, and you'll see by the end they have quite a lot of hit points. I suspect that even though they say they're a level 2 companion when you first get them, their hit points are at a level 1 level. But again, I'm not entirely positive of that because the calculations just don't seem to work out. Now, the Pathfinder source books and some source references online that are just talking about the pen and paper game suggest that they don't actually get an increase in hit points at every level that they level. So that one time they might go up a level and they will gain hit points, another time they'll go up a level and they won't. I'm not sure if that's implemented in this game or not. Also, it tells you in here that, as we can see here with the bear companion, at level 7, and there's one exception to that, which is the leopard, I think, which we'll see in a minute. At level 7, all of your animals mature to their larger size. So they start as medium animals and they become large at level 7. I suspect they mature again a couple of times because once we see the final stats that we have available, they're very different from what these scores are. So I've got a chart which has these scores on them and then these adjustments that are made at level 7 and comparisons of what the animal companions are like at level 7, and then apparently the highest level the animals can get is level 16, which we will see in the chart as well, and you'll see that the adjustments go much further than this. So there must be other increases during the game. Much as your character can increase hit points, etc. throughout the game, the animal companions seem to be able to as well. So this is the bear animal companion. Size is medium, speed is 40, which is pretty standard. An armor class of +6, which means they start with an armor class of 16 as their natural armor. They have 1 bite attack and 2 claw attacks for a total of 3 attacks per round. Decent ability scores there. You'll see always that their int, wisdom, and charisma are sort of around these values. Int's always very low. Charisma's usually pretty low. Wisdom's sort of medium. And then strength, dex, and constitution seem to be at a par as well. He gains +4 to armor and the rend ability once he becomes a large creature, as well as a bonus to strength and constitution, and they all get a deficit to dex. But at the end, their dex is still higher than you would think. So the next companion is the boar. Quite a good animal. Always in RPGs, the boar is considered quite tanky. The bear is considered to be a bit of a powerhouse, a damage dealer. The boar is always considered to be fairly tanky. Can do a decent amount of damage, but doesn't get as many attacks. Has pretty good armor, pretty good hit points. Things like that. You'll see he's got a constitution of 15, which bumps up his hit points a little bit. I think he starts with 13 hit points. He does a single attack. The dog is a new companion. It hasn't been in some of the other games that I've played, but it's a nice companion nonetheless. 1 attack of 1d6 and an extra attack, which is a trip, which does no damage. Decent stats again. So then you have, the elk. The elk, traditionally good defense, but not that great an attack. You can see here it's got 1d8 plus 2 attacks of 1d4, which is more than the dog gets, but you know, that's that. The giant centipede is definitely a very new companion in these games that I have played. A single attack doing 1d6 of damage, but it does do poison attack, which does damage to dexterity. And they have a special combat maneuver defense, which is that they can't be tripped. So if you are fighting a group of wolves, for example, one of the creatures that can do the trip maneuver and knock a thing down, the giant centipede cannot be knocked down. So that's an interesting little thing. The leopard starts as a small creature, and at level 4 it becomes a medium. Now, this doesn't explain as to whether at level 7 it then might become large like all the other creatures do, or maybe it becomes large at level 12, which is 7 more levels beyond level 4, or level 11 or 12, somewhere around there. But it only gets to level 16, and you'll see its stats are very similar to everything else by the time it gets to level 16. So I suspect that it starts as a small creature, but then does move up to being a medium, and then finally a large. Just as all the other, or maybe the creatures become bigger than large. I don't know. It's all a little, as I said, not documented, a little bit mysterious. Also, the fact that this is a small creature and yet it has the same hit points as all the others is a little weird as well. So a lot of the mechanic around these animals is a little bit strange, as I've said. Mastodon, this one's a strange one. If you're not aware, Mastodon is basically a woolly mammoth, an elephant, and yet its size is only considered to be medium at start. It does 2 attacks, a gore and a slam, and it's supposed to gain this trample maneuver at later levels as well, with an increase to armor. You really would expect that a mammoth, being such a large and powerful creature, it would have a higher strength than just 14, because even the dog, I believe, has a higher strength at 15, as does the bear, things like that. So you really would expect the mastodon to have a higher strength than that. So that's a little weird. The monitor lizard is a new, so mastodon was new as well, but the monitor lizard is another new creature that I haven't seen in similar games before. It can do a bite plus a trip, but it also, it starts as small as well, and once it gets to medium size, it gains a poison attack similar to the giant centipede. Smilodon then, now everyone so far has basically said this is the standout of the animal companions, and we'll look at the comparison between those stats in a little bit, and we'll see if that really is the case. But starts as medium size, starts with 5 attacks, a bite and 4 different claw attacks. So that's the reason why it stands out. It does 5 attacks per round. They start out being fairly small, but the fact that there's 5 of them means that if all 5 hit, they can do a lot of damage. Starting strength is fairly low at 13. As they become large, they gain a pounce maneuver and some more armor class, as well as a good bonus to strength. And then finally, we have everyone's favorite, the wolf. Now, in most games, the wolf is considered one of the better creatures to use. You often have, it's often a choice between the bear, the boar, and the wolf. If you want something that will do a good amount of damage and survive for a while, the bear is considered to be it. If you want something that's really tanky, can take a lot of damage, can take a lot of hits, generally the boar is considered to be the one. And if you want one that does a lot of damage when it hits, but is a bit of a glass cannon in that it can be killed fairly easily because it doesn't have quite the defense that some of the others, doesn't have quite the armor class, for example, wolf is usually that one. It's no different here. The armor class is slightly less, doesn't have much in the way of strength. It does a single bite attack, but it has the trip, similar to the dog in a lot of ways. But it's still a good companion, and we'll see that as it gains levels, it works out to be pretty good as well. So I'm not going to go into the game again just yet. What we're going to do is we're going to switch to a spreadsheet that I've got with some data in it, and we'll have a look at that. So as you can see, this is the chart that I have come up with. We have multiple copies of the data for each of the levels. So your animal companions start at level 2. Now, the first thing to be aware of is that the game tells you that the bear starts with a strength of 15. In fact, it doesn't. It starts with 17. Once you actually start a bear in the game and look at his stats, it's actually 17, not 15. So another little error in the details. But as you can see, at their first level, or second level as it were, there's actually a fair bit of difference between these characters. If we ignore their strength and their stats, if we just look at their armor class, you'll see that we have quite a range. The bear actually has quite a low armor class of 16 compared to some like the boar, the elk, the leopard, and the mastodon, which have an armor class of 20. So they're not going to get hit anywhere near as often. And then you've got the wolf, smilodon, monitor lizard, giant centipede, and dog, which are in the middle of those. Their hit points are all pretty much the same, 11 to 13. And their attack bonuses vary greatly as well. So the giant centipede has a 0 attack bonus at first level, all the way up to a leopard with 7 attack bonus. What that means is the leopard is going to hit a lot more than any of these other opponents, these other companions. And then once we look at the damages, so I've got each of the damages mapped out here, but then assuming that you hit with every single attack, I then have a comparison of how much damage each of these creatures would do. And because the Smilodon does so many attacks, you can see that it can do between 10 and 27 points of damage per round. In reality, it does between 0 and 27 points of damage per round, depending on how often it hits. But if it hit with all of them, that's quite a good range. But you'll notice that its attack bonus is very low. So even though the leopard only does between 6 and 13, roughly half the damage of the Smilodon, it's going at first level to hit a lot more often. And potentially, as a starting creature, it's one of the better ones. the bear is right in the middle there. It's got a attack bonus of 4, which is basically better than anything else except for the leopard, and it does 12 to 23 points of damage. So the bear starts off to be a really good companion for anybody. The leopard looks really good to start off, and the Smilodon, while it might not hit quite as often, does do a lot of damage when it does hit because it's got so many attacks. And I've seen people say, in my comments that they take the Smilodon and it just tears up things like mages and stuff like that. And that's the thing that the animal companion is going to be good for, is attacking those things like mages and archers who are often a little less armoured and they're often out on the sidelines. If you send your animal companion out against them, they will work really well, particularly at this start, at this early level. So now, the game tells you that by level 7, all of your companions will increase in size, although, for the two small ones, for the leopard and the monitor lizard, they get this increase to the next size at level 4. They may again increase at a higher level. It's undocumented, but let's just scroll down. This is their details at level 7 now. And so what we see is their stats have all gone up, just as we expect. Their armor class has all gone up as well. But what we see is that the armor classes, this is an assumption, this is not from having played to that level, but an assumption based on the details provided in the game, that their armor classes are all very much the same. So while previously we had 4 points of difference from 16 all the way up to 20, here we're only really seeing 19 to 22, so 3 points of difference. And the Mastodon is starting to stand out as the most armoured, whereas it was, there was actually 4 at 20, the boar, the elk, the leopard, and the Mastodon at level 1. The hit points, this is pretty much an assumption here because it's not clear, but you can see that the hit points are all fairly similar, as they were at first level. There's not a huge amount of difference in it. And the base attack bonus here is an assumption as well. It may actually be 7 or it might be 8. But when we actually look then at the attack bonus, you'll see that there is a vast difference between... Well, not a vast difference, but again, there's a few points difference. But the difference is less than it was. We saw up here a difference from 0 to 7. But now that difference is down for a difference from 9 to 12. So there's only 3 points of difference. So as they get further along, some of these creatures, like the centipede, that had horrendous attack bonus at its first level, level 2, is now at level 7. It has 9, which is comparable to the monitor lizard, so it's caught up 2 points on the monitor lizard, but overall, in comparison, the leopard was 7 and the leopard's only now 12, so it's caught up on the leopard a lot as well. So what you've got now is a situation where, when we looked at the damages that were being done, the minimum and maximum damages, and these are just the previous damages adjusted for the strength adjustments, really, that's all I did here to come up with these, you'll see that the damage ranges are much closer, with the exception of the Smilodon. But the Smilodon looks a lot better now because it's almost up to the same attack bonus as all of the others, whereas previously it was half of the leopard. Now it's only 1 point behind the leopard. And it's doing significantly more damage when you look at the range if it hits with everything. So the advantages of the bear with its attack bonus previously, and things like the leopard, they're now no longer anywhere near as powerful as the Smilodon is. So the Smilodon mid game, or sort of early mid game, is looking like a really good animal companion. There's no doubt about it. So what's next? Well, if we look at the final iteration of the animal companions, what we see is at level 16, they've got, and this is from a screenshot of the leveled up companions, you'll see that they've got masses of strength and dexterity and constitution. Their intelligence, wisdom, and charisma will not have changed, but they've leveled up with maximum values here, and you'll notice that they're all very similar. The dog, for some reason, stands out as having the strongest, but its strength is comparable to the mastodon, which again doesn't really make a huge amount of sense. The hit points, however, while there is nearly 20 points, there's 18 points difference between the two values, they all still only have two values, 248 or 264 points of health. I haven't put in their base attack bonus, but when you look at their actual attack values, you'll see that a lot of these are very, very similar. The leopard has a 22 here, but it has 25s as well, and most of these ones all have like 25s as their maximum, as does the Smilodon, as does the wolf. When we then look at the minimum and maximum damages based on who hits, though, what really stands out is the wolf, because previously the wolf really didn't look all that good. At 7th level, it only looked like it was doing a fraction of the damage of the Smilodon, but again, those are derived figures that I have attempted to calculate by what it should be, but that is nothing to what the game will actually do. The game may be doing something funny, but even once you look back here at 1st level, the wolf only had a single attack, doing 2 to 7 points of damage. But what we see now is that as he's leveled up, just like your character does, the wolf has gained more attacks over time. So it's possible that at level 7 here, the wolf may have actually had 2 attacks at that point, which would have doubled his effectiveness, but still wouldn't have been anywhere near what the Smilodon is. But at level 16, he has 4 attacks, and that gives him a lot of damage. So he's doing between 96 and 117 points of damage. And with his 46 armor class and 264 hit points, he's doing pretty well. Of course, the other good contender there at this point is the Smilodon. As we've seen all the way through, the Smilodon seems to work really, really well. The only other things that I'd say that would stand out a little bit is the dog is doing quite well as well. So you can see, even though he's only doing 96, it's the highest of all of the others. He's getting 3 attacks per round, which is comparable to the wolf. He's got the same hit points and the same armor class as the wolf. He's just doing 3 attacks. Now, I don't know why these values here I got from a website. It said 4 attacks, but then it actually only showed 3. So it's possible that the wolf may be doing even more damage than the 96 to 117 if he is actually getting 4 attacks, but it's unclear. And when you look at the details of the creatures in the game, you can't actually tell. So that's the thing. There's a couple of problems in the game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some information. This is on this website that I've been using. So this website is the Pathfinder Kingmaker Wiki, and it has some details here about the animal companion. Now, I don't know how up to date a lot of this information is, and this is the problem with the game. A lot of this information isn't available in the game. But if you look at the wolf here, it says that it shows 4 attacks, but only really shows 3 that do damage, 3 bites. It also has a trip, but the trip doesn't do damage, and it doesn't really need a hit. The interesting thing is that the dog, for example, shows 3 attacks. It also shows a bite and 3 bites and a trip, but it doesn't list a 4th value there, so it's unclear. Yet the leopard shows a trip and 3 attacks, but it shows 4 values. So it's all a little inconsistent there. Monitor lizard again, 3 values there, but 4 attacks with the trip. So inconsistent information there. There's some screenshots here that show you the details of the creature, and what you can't see down here very well is the details on the attacks. You can only see that there's a single attack listed here for the wolf with an amount of damage and their critical modifier But the fact is, while they have a single bite, you don't see that they get 3 attacks. Likewise, if we look at the Smilodon, for example, which does have 5 attacks, it only lists 2. It lists the bite and the claw, but it actually has 4 of the claw attacks. But it does list the details here of 19 and 20 to hit. The attack values, attack bonuses are plus 19 and plus 20, and then it does 21 to 28 and 21 to 26. It's a little hard to see because it's not zoomed in, but the fact is that you don't get an accurate number of the attacks here because this interface is only designed to show for a normal person that they have 2 different hands and they can potentially be doing attack in each hand. The Marshal tab, if the screen was grabbed, would show something else that's a little bit different. Now, we can see that this information for all of the animals. The bear, I'll let you pause on these yourself if you want to have a good look at them. The boar, the giant centipede, etc. The dog. I won't go through them all. But there's one other aspect of the interface that's really not very good, and we'll have to go into the game to show you that. So let's just do that. Okay, so what we have here is we are in the tutorial mission. We're in combat. I have a Mad Dog Barbarian and his bear companion. So the problem with the game is there is nothing down here that gives you any information about your animal companion. At the moment, I have his hit points turned on, so I can see he's at half health, right? But as soon as I come out of combat, that will go away, and if you don't have that option turned on, so if you go into your options under difficulty, and if you don't have show party member HP on always, then you will not even see it at this point. But always doesn't mean always. Always just means always in combat. If you don't have that on, you will not see how many hit points your animal companion has left. And so we've just finished that combat. Let's just get through that. Here's my animal companion standing there next to me, looks perfectly fine, but he's at low health and I don't know it. I can't see through my interface here anyway, anything about it. The only way, if I'm not in combat with that indicator on, the only way I can tell his hit points is to, if I have to click on the bear to select him and then go into the character sheet and I can see that his hit points are at 4 out of 11. There's no other way to do this. And in fact, I can't just have all of the party members selected, for example, and go, well, he was the last one I looked at. But if I go and click on myself and go see, to see my character sheet, I cannot from here see my animal companion at any point and see what his hit points are. I can't click on the animal companion there to see his details. I can't click on, say, Mad Dog or anything like that. There's nothing that I can do to see his hit points. Now, in other games, and I talk about other games that I've played a lot, the 3 that I mention a lot are Neverwinter Nights 1, Neverwinter Nights 2, and Pillars of Eternity. In Neverwinter Nights 1 and 2, your animal had another slot here, although those were over on the right-hand side down here. But your animal was included in these slots. Now, this layout is much closer to what was in Pillars of Eternity. In Pillars of Eternity, Rangers had animal companions, and their details were shown as a little thing in the corner here of the portrait where it would show the animal companion and you'd be able to see their health. In Pathfinder Kingmaker, you're going to have to really keep an eye on the animal's health. When you're in combat, you can see it via the little arc above their name if you turn that on, or you can see it as numbers above their name as well if you want. But when you're outside of combat, the only way to do it is to click on the animal and go into the character sheet, and then you can see their health. So that's going to be a big thing that you're going to have to manage, because if you don't do that, your animal companion is often going to go into combat with very low health. They will not be killed. If they get knocked down, they come back with a couple of hit points at the end of combat. But if you forget to heal them, or you don't have time and you don't have time to rest, they're going to go into the next combat with a couple of hit points, and immediately they're going to get knocked down and be useless to you. So you really want to keep an eye on that. That's the one big problem with the animal companions in Pathfinder Kingmaker. So guys, that's my video on animal companions. I hope you liked it. If you did, please share and like the video. If you've got animal companions that you really like, please post in comments. I know I'm going to get a lot of smiley dons because they're used a lot, but I'd love to hear what you like about some of the other animal companions as well, if there's ones that really work with your play style, because some of the abilities that some of those companions have really do lend well to certain play styles. So thanks for that. I will see you on the next video. Have fun and keep playing games. Bye.